Last week's module on the veiling of Muslim women brought out the extent to which societal norms that reflect male-dominated understandings may lead to women dressing either modestly, as in veils, or provocatively, as in stilettos, tight clothing, thongs, or bikinis, and thus raise questions about the construction of cultural differences between the West and Islam, particularly in the post-9/11 environment. We asked, is the issue around the veiling of Muslim women really about culture? Or is it about discriminatory attitudes stemming from anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim attitudes that have become more pervasive in the West, particularly since 9/11? This week's module on female genital mutilation also raises the issue of culture. But even the title of the module, focusing on the global outcry, suggests that this topic is along the lines of a universalist project, as brought out in Nussbaum's conception of feminism and her capabilities model, which rejects that culture or religion can be used as a defense to violate women's rights. Female genital mutilation is a difficult topic, but it is one that we need to understand. Let's begin with what it is. In a fact sheet as published by the World Health Organization, female genital mutilation and issues around it are succinctly described. Female genital mutilation, FGM for short, comprises all procedures that involve partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. The practice is mostly carried out by traditional circumcisers, who often play other central roles in communities, such as attending childbirths. However, more than 18% of all FGM is performed by healthcare providers, and this trend is increasing. FGM is recognized internationally as a violation of the human rights of girls and women. It reflects deep-rooted inequality between the sexes and constitutes an extreme form of discrimination against women. It is nearly always carried out on minors and is a violation of the rights of children. The practice also violates a person's rights to health, security, and physical integrity, the right to be free from torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, and the right to life when the procedure results in death. In the fact sheet, the World Health Organization goes on to say that there are no health benefits to FGM. It only harms girls and women, that young girls are primarily at risk, some even in infancy, and that there are about 140 million girls and women worldwide living with FGM, that it is most commonly practiced in the western, eastern, and northeastern regions of Africa, in some countries in Asia and the Middle East, and in immigrant communities in the West who have originated from these source countries, that it is justified by families and communities for various cultural, religious, and social reasons, and that there has been a widespread global response to end the practice. Indeed, in 2008, the World Health Organization was joined by 9 other UN agencies, namely the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, the United Nations Development Program, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the United Nations Population Fund, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the United Nations Children's Fund, and the United Nations Development Fund for Women, which incidentally is now part of UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women, which was created in July 2010 as part of the UN Reform Agenda. And they all jointly released a document entitled Eliminating Female Genital Mutilation, an Interagency Statement, which I have included as a recommended reading for this module. These UN organizations are joined by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International in condemning FGM, as well as many international and local women's groups who have been struggling to change embedded cultural, religious, and social attitudes. At the same time, is there an argument to be made that FGM is not a gendered practice? That is there an equivalency to be made between male circumcision and FGM? As well, is there an argument to be made that the West is in no position to stand judgment on FGM given the popularity of plastic or cosmetic surgery, so that the West is also characterized by practices that change, and some would argue deform or mutilate the female body? Moreover, Given that laws have been adopted worldwide, in both countries where FGM is practiced, as well as in many Western states with immigrant communities from these countries, criminalizing FGM, what does it mean to enforce these laws? Who, in the end, is punished? Finally, is sexual pleasure a necessary element of human flourishing, or is this a Western-imposed construct? These are the sorts of questions that we will be addressing in this module. I have asked you to read an article by Dorcas Akintunde in Chapter 4 of the Nussbaum text. I have 5 primary goals in this module. First, I want you to understand what FGM is and why it has become widely accepted that it is a violation of the human rights of girls and women. Second, I want you to assess whether there is an equivalency to be made between FGM and male circumcision. Third, I want you to assess whether there is an equivalency to be made between FGM and plastic or cosmetic surgery that has become commonplace in the West. Fourth, I want you to consider the consequences of criminalizing FGM in terms of who gets punished. Fifth, I want you to determine whether sexual pleasure is a necessary element of human flourishing. Is this need universal, or is this merely a Western construct? I appreciate that this topic may not be an easy one for so many of you. And many of you will, and indeed should, shy away from the kinds of graphic images that can be found online about FGM, likely finding the words of victims in Akintunde's article more than enough to illustrate the grave consequences of FGM. However, this is an issue that raises many important questions about politics, gender, and sexuality, and I look forward to your thoughtful discussion.